Back to another episode of Becoming a Techno Wizard, and today we are going to continue our series on anarchy. Reading about anarchy with Anarchy Works by Peter Gelderloos. So we're in chapter 6, section whatever, 52, I guess, um, talking about how will reparations for past oppressions be worked out. Very interesting, very spicy chapter. Very interesting this is in here, so it's cool that this is even included, to be honest with you. Um, so I'm curious of what's going to be said. Without further ado, let's just jump into it. Well, let's do a recap. I think last time we talked about, how communities decide to organize themselves, and it was showing how communities can and will organize themselves very effectively if given the chance. And in fact, very many governments and um, kind of operations purposely manipulate or destabilize people that have organized themselves. And so what's more important to look out for are these other organizations coming in to destabilize your movement rather than people in the movement not knowing how to you know self organize in a horizontal fashion. So that was very great to read and stuff like that. But now let's get into reparations. So, if government and capitalism disappeared overnight, people would still be divided. Yeah, unfortunately. Legacies of oppression generally determine where we live, our access to land, water, a clean environment, and necessary infrastructure, and the level of violence and trauma in our communities. People are accorded vastly differing degrees of social privilege according to skin color, gender, citizenship, economic class, and other factors. Once the exploited of the earth rise up to seize the wealth of our society, what exactly will they inherit? Healthy land, clean water, and hospitals, or depleted soil, garbage dumps, and lead pipes? It depends largely on their skin color and nationality. An essential part of an anarchist revolution is global solidarity. Solidarity is the polar opposite of charity. It does not depend on the inequality between giver and receiver. Good point. Like all good things in life, solidarity is shared. Thus, it destroys the categories of giver and receiver and neither ignores nor validates whatever unequal power dynamics may exist between the two. There can be no true solidarity between a revolutionary in Illinois and a revolutionary in Mato Grosso if they must ignore that the one's house is built with the wood stolen from the lands of the other, running the soil and leaving him and his entire community with fewer possibilities for the future. So if I can take a guess, it's gonna be a little bit of reparations. It's gonna be a little bit of realizing that, hey, we should, if not give back, because sometimes the new form of the things that have taken are not able to be given back because they've been used already, right? They've been used and stripped and abused and all this other stuff. So maybe worth it to bring those people in or go over there and see how you can help, or being, again, solidarity, seeing how you can help each other out and really paying attention to that. So let's see. Anarchy Mistake itself was make itself wholly incompatible with colonialism. Either colonialism continues to the present day in new forms, or a historical legacy which we try to ignore. That's the thing; you cannot ignore the past, right? Just because you're embarrassed or you don't want to hear about it, or even if you're secretly prideful, you can't ignore the past. You have to learn from it. You have to figure out what went wrong, why, or how it happened, and things like that, and see what we can do today. Let's continue. Where was I? Yeah. Thus, an anarchist revolution must also base itself in the struggles against colonialism. These include people in the global south who are trying to reverse neoliberalism, indigenous nations struggling to regain their land, and black communities still fighting to survive the legacies of slavery. Those who have been privileged by colonialism, white people and everyone living in Europe or a European settler state, the US, Canada, Australia, should support these other struggles politically, culturally, and materially, because anti authoritarian rebellions have been limited in scope thus far, and meaningful reparations would have to be global in scale because of the globalization of oppression. There are no examples that fully demonstrate what reparations would look like. However, some small scale examples show that the willingness to make reparations exists, and that the anarchist principles of mutual aid and direct action can accomplish reparations more effectively than democratic governments, with their refusal to acknowledge the extent of past crimes and their embarrassing half measures. The same goes for revolutionary governments, which typically inherit and cover up oppression within the states they take over, as exemplified by how callously the governments of the USSR and China took their places at the heads of racial empires while claiming to be anti imperialist. Great, great freaking points. So I want to focus on this again, just like the mutual aid and direct action, right? Is the fact that a lot of these places don't need or want handouts. They don't want you to come and solve their problems. They just want to work together with people. They just want to cooperate. They just want to be some just want to be left alone, right? And that's maybe the best mutual aid you can give is just get out of their business, right? While others are like, we need oh, our land has been stripped of resources, because of cash crops and things like that, industrial farming, agriculture, and industrial, meat and all this other stuff. And so we need you to come get these cows out the way, or come, share the information of how to plant, share the technology and how to refurbish that soil and stuff like that, right? And that help might be needed. So it depends on the place, it depends on the people of what they want, and things like that. You have to be open to these things. You, as in those of us that have this privilege, those of us that have benefited from their oppression, from their destruction of their land and property and freedom and all this other stuff. So, in the state of Chiapas in southern Mexico, the Zapatistas rose up in 1994 and won autonomy for dozens of indigenous communities, named after Mexican President Revolutionary Zapata, and espousing, I don't know, Zapata, and espousing a mix of indigenous, Marxist, and anarchist ideas. The Zapatistas formed an army guided by popular encuentros, or gatherings, to fight back against neoliberal capitalism and the continuing forms of exploitation and genocide inflicted by the Mexican state. To lift these communities up out of poverty following generations of colonialism and to help counter the effects of military blockades and harassment, the Zapatistas called for support. Thousands of volunteers and people with technical experience came from around the world to help Zapatista communities build up their infrastructure, and thousands of others continue to support the Zapatistas by sending donations of money and equipment or buying fair trade goods, producing autonomous territory. So, yeah, like what I said, you got to give. Sometimes it just might be the support, sometimes it might just be some of the knowledge, or sometimes just money and equipment, stuff like that. So, depends on the situation, on the community, on how you can help. This assistance is given in a spirit of solidarity. Most importantly, it is one of the Zapatistas' own terms. It's on the Zapatistas' own terms. This contrasts with the model of Christian charity, in which the goals of the privileged giver are imposed on the impoverished receiver, who is expected to be grateful. Exactly, right? That's what's so frustrating. Oh, you should be grateful for what you gave you and stuff like that. It's just such a patronizing and inherently silly idea, inherently hierarchical idea. The idea that, oh, I have more power and I'm going to give it to you and you should be grateful, right? Aren't you proud of what I've done for you? Like, no. The truth is that even if you do have more power, a lot of that times that power is built on the oppression of these other people. So you shouldn't be proud of that. You shouldn't be, oh, you shouldn't you be grateful? Like, no, because in the first place, you shouldn't have had this power in the first place, right? Like the whole reason why you gained that amount of wealth or power or whatever is through the destruction of these people's, way of life. So this is why it's so important to recognize and to be, aware of the past and to be aware of how the world works and how the world, got to where it is. Because if not, then you're just gonna assume that you're in a better state, just because of who you are or where you're from. But in reality, it's almost always a deep history of conflict there. And if you don't recognize that, then you're just going to come off as extremely arrogant and rude. And oftentimes, you're not even going to be able to give the best help because you're not going to be listening to what they actually want or need. You're going to be thinking about what's best for you, like oh, what can you give that will make you seem the best, the most giving and things like that, rather than what do they actually need and what do they actually want and what will actually give them some freedom. So Peasants in Spain had been oppressed throughout centuries of feudalism. The Party Revolution in 1936 enabled them to reclaim the privilege and wealth their oppressors had derived from their labors. Peasant assemblies in liberal villages met to decide how to redistribute territory seized from large landowners so those who had labored as virtual serfs could finally have access to land. Unlike the farcical reconciliation commissions arranged in South Africa, Guatemala, and elsewhere, which protect oppressors from any real consequences and, above all, preserve the unequal distribution of power and privilege that is a direct result of past oppressions. These assemblies empower the Spanish peasants to decide for themselves how to recover their dignity and equality. Aside from redistributing land, they also took over pro fascist churches and luxury villas to be used as community centers, storehouses, schools, and clinics. In 5 years of state instituted agrarian reform, Spain's Republican government redistributed only 876,327 hectares of land. In just a few weeks of revolution, the peasants seized 5,692,202 hectares of land for themselves. This figure is even more significant considering that this redistribution was opposed by Republicans and socialists and could only take place in the part of the country not controlled by the fascists. Crazy. Absolutely amazing. So yeah, that was a short section, but we'll end it there. This next one is very long, so that will be its own little video. So yeah, as always, thanks for listening. Thanks for reading with me. Let me know what you learned about this segment and what you think about reparations and all this other stuff. This was great to read. Again, I love this book. This is really fantastic, and glad we're making some good progress. So that's it. Have a good day. See you.